Okay, here, check this out. What is it like to be neurodivergent? There is no one answer to what it's like to be neurodivergent. There isn't even an answer to what it's like to have any kind of specific neurodivergent diagnosis. So, other types of neurodivergent patterns: Tourette's, dyspraxia, synesthesia, dyscalculia, Down syndrome, epilepsy, and chronic mental health issues such as bipolar, OCD, borderline personality disorder, anxiety, and depression. That's like all the disorders. That's like everything. You can't just throw everything in the world in a category and say it's neurodivergence. Neurodivergent is a term used to describe people whose brains process information in a way that is different from what is considered typical. It is not a medical term, but rather a way to describe people without using the terms normal and abnormal. This is hilarious. This is just a quick Google search, and the first thing that comes up is literally like, we're trying to avoid saying normal and abnormal. So let's just use me as a guinea pig. We'll look and see how many of these I have. Okay, so autism symptoms, repetitive behaviors, having intense interests in specific topics, delayed language, hyperactivity, impulsivity, inattentiveness, unusual eating and sleeping habits, difficulty with social interactions. I have like half of these, like, let's be honest. Okay, autism, I got it. All right, let's move on. ADHD symptoms. Okay, these ones we kind of know, right? Inattention, hyperactivity, having too much energy, moving and talking too much, constant fidgeting, forgetting dates, cooking timers, important reminders, misplacing items. I am like off the charts. ADHD, I got it. I would say, like, just thinking of myself as a kid, I would say I have like a couple, maybe, symptoms of learning disability. Not much, but you know, a couple. I don't really have a bunch of conditions, right? I don't really have any of these conditions. I don't identify as having any of them. My brain definitely works differently than most of the people around me, but no one's ever told me that there's something abnormal about me, that I need to be checked, that I need to work with a counselor to see if they can help me through these things. It was really more just like, you know, when I was younger, I noticed that I would forget and lose things so continuously that it was ruining my life. So I just naturally started training myself to not forget and lose things. Lo and behold, I forget and lose things much less than I did when I was 20. I'm not saying it's that easy for everyone with everything. We've all got different things to different degrees. That's not the point. What are we really talking about here, right? What are we really talking about here? The brain condition, the real mental illness going on here, is that we are in an obsessive spiral of left brain categorization, right? Categorization, breaking everything down to smaller and smaller parts and bits. We're getting more detailed, we're getting more granular, right? So the part of our brain that zooms in and zooms in and zooms in, and we're doing that to oblivion, and there's no resolution. There's no need for it. It's not serving us. There's no purpose, right? There's no underlying, I mean, you can say, well, self-understanding, but really, how much do you understand yourself just because you understand a billion million little quirks that you have? And they're framed in a way that's continuously pointing out to you that you're different than other people. Is that the type of self-knowledge that we need? Is that real self-knowledge?
Hi, my name is Joey, and I'm a late diagnosed autistic. My diagnosing psychiatrist, kudos to them, basically noticed that I was autistic because I glitched during our interview. Okay, these are the exact words that they wrote in my evaluation. Initially, when the examiner provided an indirect comment about Joey's life in New York and then purposefully paused, Joey missed the cue to add more about that experience. However, after about a second or two, Joey got the cue. She looked toward the examiner as if to check in on the nature of the pause, and then proceeded to build on the comment the examiner made. She seemed to autocorrect after a brief delay. My psychiatrist basically saying that I was live buffering in front of their eyes. If you notice a human woman buffering IRL, they might be autistic like me.
Or what if she's just thinking? I mean, yeah, I guess we could really delve into like, now I have to make up a new symptom for myself. I notice I buffer faster than other people. It's like, okay, we can go down that road. But what I want people to know is that when we go down that road, there's nothing good for you there. You keep going and you become more self-aware, and you become more self-aware, and you notice all these new differences about you that you never noticed before. And then you notice someone online is talking about it. Oh, and they've got a category. Right? This is what this is all about. Categories, labels, symptoms, details, categories, labels, symptoms, details, spiraling into oblivion.
One of the weirdest symptoms of ADHD is that you do not miss people. Because when something is out of sight, it's literally out of mind. And then people are mad at you because you don't keep in touch with them, thinking that you're a heartless asshole, not knowing that your ADHD makes you literally forget they exist.
Maybe you're just immersed in what you're doing? Are we pathologizing being immersed in what you're doing? So the reason I decided to make this video was because I was getting bombarded with this notion that like suddenly 90% of the population seems to be neurodivergent, and they're talking about it, and they've been diagnosed, and their therapists are all telling them all these unusual things about them. And I saw this comedian talking about how she was an adult who got diagnosed with autism, and she had no idea there was anything weird about her, and all of a sudden she just felt like completely weird all of a sudden for the first time ever. So what the right brain does is it zooms out, the opposite of the left brain. So how I'm saying there's this spiral, we're zooming in, categorizing. You're different. There's we're splitting everyone. The right brain does the opposite. It zooms way out. What I'm doing in this video, it zooms way out and it looks at all of it. And it's like, wait a minute, what's happening here, right? If we look at this, we look at that, we look at this, we look at that, on and on and on forever. When we look at it all, what does it mean? What is the meaning behind it that we can take, that we can extract and learn about life on Earth as a human? So if there's more feminine, right-brained perception, we're allowed to look at neurodiversity and have it say, here's what I think it would say. Different people have different brains. Brains are so incredibly complex that every person you meet has a different brain, even though they might relate to other people more than others. And the reason that this is that your thoughts, your emotions, and your past experiences are shaping your brain and affecting your autonomic nervous system, which in turn gives you a bunch of these what we might call symptoms or ways of being, and that's how our neurology works. So instead of splitting people into, neurodivergent conversations, they probably think they're zooming out and going broad, right? Because they're saying these people are, what do they call it? Neurotypical, and these people are neurodivergent, and that's this big, huge discovery. But really, isn't what we're saying that these people are normal and these people are not behaving normal? We've created a box, right? Even though, like I said at the beginning, that it's like they're fighting so hard to not just say what they mean, normal versus abnormal. They're like, no, 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 no. That is what you mean. That is what you're saying. You're saying there's a box, and people fit in the box and they have fewer problems, right? And then people who don't fit in the box tend to have more problems in their life, and then they tend to need more support that they're not getting to try to adapt and fit themselves in this box that we've created, this completely man-made box that we've never questioned in our entire fucking lives. The real question is, what the fuck is the box? The box is the left brain creation of culture, of society, of school, of work, of systems and structures and government and institutions. That's the box. So when we have people who can't fit into the box, guess what? That's going to be like 50% of the population, if not more, increasingly more, as we go down this path of trying to hyper control everything, and people aren't taking their vacation days anymore, and everyone's stressed literally 24/7. There's going to be more and more and more people, theoretically, right, entering into that category of neurodivergent. I can't do this anymore is neurodivergent. I can't do this anymore. Some of us were born this way. I was definitely born this way. I could never do it. Could never do it. I'm extremely right-brained. I'm left-handed. There's a lot of research around left-handed people having different, things going on with their brain. So for me, this has always been a thing. It's odd to me that there's suddenly now this like clan of people on the internet who are like, oh my God, I'm different. And I'm like, I'm 35. You're 35 years too late. Neurodivergence is not a phenomenon by itself. It's a phenomenon happening with a bunch of other phenomenon that, like, once you see them all, you can categorize them. It's okay to categorize things. I'm not saying that. And you can see that they're all the same thing, right? The same, there's the same meaning underneath it. So we have neurodivergent people like having meltdowns and they can't handle regular life. We have the medical system, and we have like 20 new diseases every year, and it's like, oh my God, no other country is coming up with this many diseases. We're literally creating them. We're so fucking creative. We're creating the diseases, mostly women. We're creating new autoimmune disorders, like left and right. We have the school system increasingly medicalizing the children, right? It's the story of a culture that's going one way, and it's losing sight, right? Losing sight of the big picture. So this leads me to my big point. You might be wondering, well, okay, you don't like the term neurodivergent. What the hell does it matter? What is the point of what you're saying, and why is it any better than what any of these people are saying? And so I want to reframe neurodivergence. Since, like that article said, it kind of just includes any old random thing that's going on with you. I want to throw that out. What we're really talking about, I think, is something called divergent thinking. A divergent thinker is someone who approaches problems and ideas in unconventional and creative ways, often generating multiple solutions or perspectives rather than following linear or traditional models of thinking. The change that we need to see is that we need to welcome divergent thinking into the mainstream, because we have a lot of problems right now in this culture. We have a very low quality of life compared to how much money we have. And to embrace divergent thinking, and we're going to get into in other videos why we're not doing that. If we were to embrace divergent thinking and divergent thinkers, instead of casting them out of society and labeling them as weird and thinking they're weird and sending them off for diagnoses and things, if we were to put them in positions of power, give them things to do, we could transform all of these problems, right? According to research, while a large portion of the population has the potential for divergent thinking, studies indicate that only a minority consistently demonstrate high levels of divergent thinking, potentially dropping as people age and are exposed to more conventional thinking patterns. Studies show a large percentage of children, young children, exhibit high levels of divergent thinking, and this declines as they grow up. Their environment may not support it and may get in the way of being allowed to think divergently. This is telling us that cultural conditioning is the phenomenon that we are up against, and because we're only allowed to think one way, and we're only going to get hired for jobs and given good grades if we think one way, then divergent thinkers are generally not allowed to be considered successful members of society. You see all these hip, trendy business articles about how divergent thinking is the way to get ahead in business, and divergent thinkers always win. If you are someone who is a divergent thinker, you are, you'll notice when you go out places and you try to talk, people will have strange reactions to you, or they might even be triggered or offended by things you say that counter everything they know. So there's this disconnect between divergent thinking, it's so genius, and yet when we're showing up places, people don't want us to be this way. So the problem we're having is not that we don't have enough information and we don't have enough categories of neurodivergent people and we don't understand them enough. The problem we're having is with the normal people. The problem we're having is that too many people are living too conventionally, and it's causing them all these problems, usually ones that they're in denial about, and that we as divergent thinkers could easily solve if we were allowed to participate in any meaningful way, aside from being administrative assistants, these low-level roles that we won't, it's we can't get paid for them. So this is part of my whole reframe, from getting rid of the neurodivergent bullshit because it's all a distraction. What we need to bring in pretty much everywhere, because of the type of culture we're in, is divergent thinking. And divergent thinkers do this naturally because they embody more of this feminine, what we'll call a feminine force. So their right brain is freer. It's more active. It's allowed to float around. And like we said about stepping back, seeing more of the bigger picture, the right brain person can easily draw these connections between seemingly unrelated things. A more neurotypical person, or whatever you want to call it, would say wow, they're drawing connections of these seemingly disconnected things. No, they're not. They're zooming out and they're seeing the connections that were there all along. So this is a little subsect of the population that I want to start highlighting, because in this whole big picture conversation of balancing the masculine and feminine, the feminine's been suppressed, these divergent thinkers are the people who are being suppressed and ignored and misunderstood, and they're being thrown into all of these random categories that don't really do anything for them, and they're being put on all these medications that don't really do anything but tame them, right? They're tamed. We don't want you tamed. Taming divergent thinkers is not going to get us anywhere we think it's going to get us. It's going to make them docile, it's going to make them workers, and our culture as a whole is going to continue to descend into all this bullshit that we, as divergent thinkers, could easily solve if we were, maybe not easily solve, but solve if we were given the opportunity. So I want to talk more about this. Click the link below and I have this cheat sheet of basically what needs to happen if you are a divergent thinker, you're feeling out of place, like you don't belong in this culture and there's nowhere for you to fit. That's a very common experience. In this cheat sheet, I talk about basically the process from start to finish of what needs to happen for the divergent thinker to not only find their place and where they fit in this culture, but stand in their power, get over all of their emotional baggage, all of their ego hang-ups, because when you're an outsider, it gives you a lot of this emotional baggage. So you have more things to plow through than the average person might. The average person fits, everything makes sense to them, right? They don't have to think about any of this. There are unique barriers in place for divergent thinkers. And so this sheet is all about that. It's all about what you need to do. I'm gonna reopen one-on-one sessions. So if anyone's interested in that, I'll give information in that sheet. Subscribe to this channel. I'm gonna be talking about more of these things, especially in terms of women and women's experience, but we're gonna talk about a lot of things. So hit the subscribe, hit the that bell notification thing. Thanks for watching. See you next time.